Hey, welcome to Doodleable. You know what? Wait a minute. Today is gonna be an adventurous episode of Doodleable. Because today, you see, I was inspired. I woke up, I noticed that the League of Legends World Championships were in the middle of their groups, or at the end of the group stages, and I figured, you know what, I will draw my favorite pirate from that game, Gangplank. For those who don't know, League of Legends is a game where, I'm not going to really explain all of it, but there are hundreds of characters, or more than 100 characters to choose from, and the one that I have played personally the most in a game of space dragons and giant robots and wizards and whatnot, I picked the pirate. He's just a pirate. His only special quality is he has a flaming sword, but I love him for it. So I decided to do him and do League of Legends justice by drawing Gangplank today. I already had to give him a new hat because the first one was just not cutting it, and this part of the drawing was interesting because I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted him to look like, what I wanted him to do in the pose. I knew I needed his flaming sword because that was his single most characteristic trait. Beyond that, he has a big old captain's cloak, a big, the big sword, the beard. So beyond that, now I'm getting into the other hand, and there were lots of options here, right? Because he has different abilities in this game, and one of them is he eats an orange, and it restores some of his health. It's called Remove Scurvy is the name of the ability. But I thought, alright, well, I want him to be a little bit more dangerous than just holding an orange. So I tried to draw a fist, failed miserably, and figured, you know what? We're just gonna save drawing hands for another day. So I drew a big barrel of a gun to kind of cover it, because he does have a pistol as well as his flaming sword. So we got through that. We're moving forward. I was thinking back to my cowboy quick doodle for the legs, because he needed to have a powerful stance, but I didn't want him to be kind of on any sort of stride. I wanted him to be planted solid, because for a pirate, he's a pretty solid dude. I guess most pirates would have been, but whatever. Made the hat a little bit bigger because I needed to go bigger. I felt like my first sort of reaction to that fully zoomed out drawing was that he needed to be just a little bit bigger everything to fit the kind of vibe of the game and nature of the character and whatnot. So I did. I made a couple adjustments to the hat and the cloak. All in all, I was pretty happy with the lines, making the collar a little bigger too. I definitely did need to go over them. It was never really a possibility to go right into this without going over the lines. They were a little bit too sketchy. I was thinking ahead a little bit at this point to how I might detail it, because I knew that I wanted to make him look a little weathered. Again, he's a pirate that's going into battle against all the manner of mythical beasts and magic and whatnot. He's got to be pretty battle-hardened and ready to go. So while I was penciling in these lines, I was thinking, all right, what can I do to make him look more intense, more weathered, more ready to fight these other characters? And so I did think, all right, maybe I'll kind of shade in the surfaces a little differently. Yeah, we'll get to that. It'll come up in a minute, and I'll keep explaining it when I do. But in the meantime, I'll share a little bit about this character, because I played this game for, I think it's been like 8 years now. I remember starting out and it was me and actually my older brother playing on our couch with laptops and having no idea what we were doing. And little did I know back then that I would be hooked on playing it for the next 8 years. But regardless, as I got better at the game, I kept like sorting through characters to see which ones I might want to play, because they all have very different play styles, right? Some of them, like wizards, you have to stay far back and cast spells, and the big mythical beasts might be able to get up close and personal. And Gangplank here was a unique blend where he's always like the skirmisher, because he couldn't go toe to toe with the big dudes, but he was scrappy and quick and good at darting in and out of combat, and I really liked that about him. So I picked him up somewhat early, but then it was actually that was years and years ago now, but they completely redid his character and made it much more interesting as far as like the gameplay goes. He used to be very much like you point, you click, you don't really have to have much input yourself. The character kind of played itself to a certain extent, and they revamped him to be much more involved. So I was very happy when that happened, because it made it a much more dynamic experience, and certainly made it a lot more fun to play as the guy that I had loved to play. So I'm finishing up with the color blocking now, and I did have to change the blue. I think that his main cloak, I was looking at a picture of him as I drew. The cloak was a really dark navy blue, and just with the color scheme that I was starting to go with, it didn't really seem to fit, so I made the executive decision to make the cloak a dark gray and red. Here we go with the details, yeah, because I needed some texture to this thing, so I kind of just went in, tried a bunch of different things. I ended up going in with a pretty basic paintbrush type brush, and just literally dashing over a lot of the surfaces just to give it some sort of texture before I went in and shaded it. I think it made a big difference at the end. It certainly made him look a little bit more weathered than he otherwise would have. And then obviously, I feel like I hardly need to say it at this point if you've watched any of my other videos, but very, very heavy with the shading, especially on a character like this. And on a character where I would have a second light source, because the sword is going to be on fire at the end, and you'll notice that I put that in right at the very end. But with the sword on fire, I wanted to try to make it a harsh contrast between the light from the sword cast on his face and the darkness of being away from the light. So it was another little challenge for myself, and I was happy to have it, and happy to have it on such a cool character and for such a cool purpose, because flaming swords are just a classically awesome fantasy trope. So I was more than excited to throw one on this guy. Going in with the light now. I actually went very light with the light. I didn't cover a lot of surfaces with this pass because I knew that I would be going in with the firelight and trying to touch up a lot of the character with that. So this was kind of a quick pass over, but I think it definitely still was impactful, helped. Alright, here we go with the fire. This was actually a lot of fun, and I say that on every video, but this was new and different because I am just now starting to get more into drawing these kinds of glowing effects on my drawings. I think that it's relatively easy, and it certainly makes it a lot more dynamic than it had been previously. I use the sort of Gaussian blur technique, or like option in the layer edits, to, once I do the outline of something that's going to be throwing light, I'll blur it a little bit so that it isn't perfectly crisp. And then yeah, now I'm going in and touching up whatever surfaces are closest and facing the sword to be orangey and colored as they should. It was a little bit interesting because usually, I mean, you'll start to notice almost all of my drawings, the light is a simple right to left, one light source. But I was super happy with this, and I think that I nailed it. So I'm glad that you guys stopped by and got to hang out while I drew Gangplank, one of my favorite video game characters of all time. I hope that you liked the adventurous episode. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time.